Hello, my friends. Within this particular lesson, I would like to emphasize the most common mistakes that people make during practice. That is to say, I will be talking about the things that you should not do. During standing posture, people often tend to lock their knees. To avoid this, do not simply bend your knees, but rather sit gently into the hips, as though you are sitting onto a chair just behind you, a very high chair, only a few centimeters away from you. And as you sit slightly back and down, your hips, knees, and ankles flex naturally. If you end up in this posture through this method rather than through simply bending your knees, you will be much better off. For this movement, as you circle around your navel, avoid pulling your shoulders upward toward your ears too much. Avoid tensing your hands or lifting your chest, arching your back too much. Rather, allow the movement to be very quiet and gentle. The hands circling over the belly, the elbows are soft. As your hands rest on your back, the most common problems tend to be pushing your hips forward to make it easier to put the hands on the back, or straining the shoulders backward to get the hands in the right position. Both the shoulders and the lower back and hips need to be in a neutral, comfortable position. People also tend to lift their shoulders as their hand comes up in whatever position their hand is in. With practice, you will learn how to keep your shoulders soft and relaxed. The length of the neck continuous and effortless throughout the movement. You also want to avoid pulling down on the side that is shortening. Instead, emphasize the side that is growing longer, softening long. Again, rather than closing strongly on one side, simply emphasize opening and lengthening along the other, and your spine will make this gentle waving movement from side to side, and it will be much healthier for your body. People will also often pull their head down toward their ear during this movement, rather than keeping the length of their neck long and soft. Or they perhaps hold their breath, which also causes a lot of tension and stagnation. Take your time. As you gently tilt the pelvis in a circle, one of the most common mistakes is that people tend to use a lot of force and tension through the waist. They forcibly tuck the pelvis, pulling it underneath, tightening their abdomen or tightening their lower back. They push strongly through their legs or even lock their knees. That causes a lot of stagnation. For this movement, one of the most common problems is that rather than keeping the head centered effortlessly, instead people will rotate their head around their waist, which changes the angle of the movement and which particular joints are affected. We want to keep the head relatively centered and circle the waist around the hips. Also, allowing the movement to be effortless, avoiding clenching the glutes or tightening the waist or holding the breath. Always remaining soft and effortless. For the movement with the neck and upper body, by far the most common mistake seems to be the use of force and tension. People consistently have the habit of pressing into their obstructions. They press through blockages, forcing big sounds to occur. Forcing various styles of cathartic release during the movement. We are not looking for that style of release. Instead, again, continue with the length along the neck. Don't scrunch your neck down along one side and then compress it along the other. Don't pull it down in the back or compress it in the front. Use this movement to increase the length of the neck as the head floats upward just from various angles. And always finding an easier way through obstructions rather than pressing into them, going slowly. With this movement, it's very common for people to hold their breath, lock their knees, lift and roll their shoulders forcefully, rather than allowing a gentle wave of softness to travel up along the length of the spine. Continue breathing naturally, effortlessly. Allow the knees to gently take part in the movement without going past the toes. And allow your spine to wave open without trying to lift or add anything to the movement. Always taking the time to settle. The most common mistake here is simply not waiting long enough for your body to relax. We're often too agitated to take the time needed to really settle. For black snake, the most common mistake is often around the position of the knees, and it can cause a lot of difficulty and damage. If I'm twisting to my right, my left hip stays open. It empties, my leg falls open. When I'm twisting to my left, my right hip gently falls open in the opposite direction. What this does is it helps to keep the alignment of the knees correct. The knees should always point over the toes at this stage of practice. If your knee starts to twist in the direction of your twist, your spinal movement, then you are doing something wrong at this stage. If I twist to my left, my right knee opens gently because my hip falls open and makes space. Another common mistake has to do with the tension in the shoulders. As my hand floats up behind my head, the shoulder blade actually sinks gently down the back. Always maintain the length along the neck and upper shoulder. During white snake, the most common mistake is that people use the movement to increase tension in their shoulders rather than to release the tension there. Sometimes during classes I hesitate to teach this movement because I want people to leave softer rather than adding more constriction and tension to their shoulders and neck. So as your hands lift, the idea of this movement is to teach the shoulders to soften, the chest to open and close, the upper back to release, the arms to grow long. Find a way to make that happen since I can't be there to help you. And in the very least, do not allow yourself to be more tense and constricted at the end of the practice. Be at least 1% softer, and that's good enough for now. 1% softer every day is a huge amount of progress. Similarly with the last two, golden snake tends to generate a few very common mistakes for people. The knees tend to twist, and the shoulders tend to tighten, and the breath gets held. Always allow the breath to be natural. When I am twisting my waist to the right, my left hip is soft and remains open. When my hand floats up above my head, the shoulder remains soft, sinking down the back, so there's actually more space that opens along the neck. The crown of the head remains floating. Staying soft. Another common mistake is sinking too low into the movement because it looks very beautiful when people do. You may find that if you're practicing in public or around other people, especially if you have an athletic nature, that you want to sink deeply into the posture and show off a bit. And I would caution you against that, especially if you suffer from back pain, because you'll just make things worse. Our goal for the moment is learning to settle through the body, not to lower the body, and that is easier to find in a higher stance. Always taking the time to settle. Now we enter into the spontaneous movement Qigong practice. Turtle playing in the water is a wonderful opportunity to find that sense of playfulness. Practice listening deeply to your own body, and to be creative in the way that you move and explore. Take your time. If you notice that you tend to have specific mistakes happening to you over and over again, perhaps twisting the knees or tightening the shoulders or holding your breath, find various movements that touch upon that difficulty and give you the opportunity to practice it. Staying soft, the neck releases upward, so that the weight of the head floats away. The shoulders are soft, allowing the elbows to sink and be heavy, the hands deeply relaxed. Feeling the chest empty, the weight sinking away. This allows the upper back to open, the belly to soften. Feeling the lower back become nourished and open. This allows the pelvis to settle, the tailbone gently sinks toward the earth. The waist softens. The hips are relaxed, releasing the weight down through the body, through the upper legs, the knees, the lower legs, the ankles, and the feet, all soft and effortless, your toes relaxed to the ground. Whatever the movement, allow those proper postural relationships. Sometimes people will allow their minds to wander away. Perhaps they begin their practice and a half an hour or an hour later, their practice is over and they realize that they weren't there and present for any of it. And this is missing an opportunity, both to heal and to enjoy your life. So when your mind wanders away, practice coming back, not forcefully, simply releasing your awareness back into the present moment. Softening your mind the same way that you soften your hands and your shoulders. And as you practice, you want some small piece of your awareness always nestled into that space between the navel and the spine. So that eventually all of your movements will be organized around that space in the body, the dantian. Another very common mistake that people will make is allowing their feet to become very cold while they practice. Keep your feet warm. Wear the proper shoes if it's cold outside. If it's inside, stand on a carpet or a gentle warming pad. Also, it's very important to allow your back to remain nice and warm. This will allow your back to remain soft, which is, of course, very important for this practice. Allowing your whole body to remain soft. Sometimes people, during this movement, compress downward. They pull their chin down and in. They pull their chest down. They squeeze their waist toward their knees. That is the opposite of what we're trying to create. Instead, open the back, open the neck. If you release one side of the body, it allows it to soften long. Soften your glutes, soften the space behind your knees, and then soften the front of the body as you rise. There's no need to clench and grab and to create force in the body. This practice should help you become free of that habit, bit by bit. Also, with time and practice, it's important to recognize that as you are lifting your body back up, you're not actually lifting. That's just what it seems like from the outside. You're allowing your body to release the weight. Allow it to fall down through you. The hips sink, and as you become light, your body straightens itself back up. But not because you lift your body as though you're pulling up against gravity. Find a way to release the weight down and through, and allow that to return you to an upright position. Again, it may look similar to the outside world, but from the inside, it will be a completely different experience. Similarly, for this movement, as you lift upward, allow the movement to float up because you're releasing everything that holds you down to the ground. So as you experience your hands floating up toward the sky, encourage a sense of lightness and release, rather than clenching and pushing yourself upward. As you lift the earth, it's the same. Don't press your legs down and pull your arms up. Instead, release the weight down through your body so that your body becomes light and effortless, and the sense of floating and lengthening upward is what results. Again, all of this will become obvious as you practice. Just keep at it day by day, moment by moment, letting go of your body, softening long and through. As your hands lift up, often people will compress their shoulders up toward their ears. Instead, keep them soft down. As you sink down, people often will sink too low, or they will compress their body into their legs, or their knees will twist, rolling in or out of alignment, or go too far past their knees. All of these are signs of going too far, too fast, too low. It's okay to stay shallow in the posture and more effortless. Emphasize learning to find a way to allow things to sink through and settle through your body rather than trying to push your body up and down. as you swing gently. If you have pain in your hands, perhaps from an arthritic condition, avoid smacking your hands against your body too hard. Find a way just to gently move your arms without that. Probably the most common mistake for swings is, again, twisting the knees. As I twist my body swinging toward the right, my left hip opens. It falls open so that my left knee also falls away from the twist. So if I twist my body toward the left, my right knee falls open, rather than following me around the twist, which is very dangerous for the knee joint. Please be cautious with your knees. Again, as you stand, the most common mistake is rushing. Take your time. Let your body and mind settle. That's the practice. Notice if your knees are locked or your hips are pushed forward toward your toes. Often people tend to lean back, especially if their legs grow tired. They lock their knees, push their hips forward, and lean back so that their shoulders are no longer positioned over their hips. When that happens, all of the weight from gravity and their movements ends up collecting in their lower back and their knees, damaging the joints. So please do make sure that your hips remain beneath your shoulders, and your hips, knees, and ankles are all soft, never locked. Perhaps the most common mistake that people make during self-massage is doing it with their hands being cold. Eventually, as you practice Qigong, your hands will get nice and warm. But if you notice that your hands are chilly, please do warm them up. You can hold a cup of warm tea or just wear mittens or gloves. Find a way to keep your hands warm during practice, and this will aid circulation and be much more comfortable to your body when you start doing the self-massage. Again, the most common mistake here is trying too hard to reach behind. And so perhaps pulling your shoulders up toward your ears or pushing your hips far forward so it's easier to get your hands behind you. Find a way to gently massage your back, keeping it warm without destroying the softness you just generated in your hips and shoulders. If you need to, ask a friend. As you massage down your legs, you are not locking your knees. This is not an hamstring stretch. This is a comfortable release down the body toward the ground. from the hips to the feet. All the joints are soft. Avoid seeking out a stretch. You don't have to go that deep if it's uncomfortable. Just gently brush down your body. Same with the arms. As you brush downward from the shoulder toward the fingertips, allow the weight to travel all the way down through your body, through your feet and into the ground. So it's a wave of motion, not just down your arm, but the full length of the body. And as you shake, avoid generating tension. Allow it to be a loose, soft experience. With time, it gets easier and easier. Don't add tension after you've worked so hard to become soft. Pausing as long as you need to feel centered and relaxed before resuming your day. Perhaps look around, enjoy the space around you. Passing on some love to your community. And always, always enjoying your practice.